you may think that the newspaper motivates your behavior. For example, if you want to go to the movies on Friday, what do? Well, you get the paper and you see what's on. But notice that the behavioral decision you had already made. That was to go to the movies. The media simply provided you with a roadmap or a list of where to go. As far as attitudes, it's called cognitive assonance, and that is that when you read something or even hear something, although it's a little different when you hear it, because then the relationship with the person you're hearing it from comes into play. So let's forget that for the moment. Just talk about when you read the paper and you read something that contradicts what you already believe, you tend to say, no, that's not true. And when you read something you already believe, you say, yes, that's true. If you don't believe this, get a copy of a newspaper that runs both conservative and liberal columnists. And if you're a liberal, you'll read Mary McGrory or Dave Broder and say, right on. See? Bill Raspberry, go for it. And then you'll read George Will, and you'll say, why do they run this trash anyway? And if you're a conservative, it'll be the other way around. Just try it out yourself. It's cognitive assonance. That's what we do, sometimes called selective cognitions. You know, the scholars have 50 names for everything. But what it means is that we tend, for our own self-esteem, we tend to reinforce what we already believe. Because changing belief is very difficult. So McCombs catalyzed all of this, and his bottom line is critical for the media. He said, the media has very little power to tell us what to think, but it has real power to tell us what to think about. And that's called the agenda-setting power of the media. So that's why, if the media are reporting it, people are probably talking about it. Now, why is that true? Well, when you go to a party and you need to make small talk, what do? You probably talk about a book you read, something you saw on the television or heard on the radio or read in a newspaper, magazine. You know, it's just, there it is. Now, it doesn't mean you're committed to it, doesn't mean anything. But it's just what you do. So the media does have this power to put things on the agenda. And even though today there's such a multiplicity of media, you know, to really reach any large number, the mass media is now an oxymoron. You know, USA Today just passed the Wall Street Journal as the largest circulation of any daily publication. Remember that on issues, television really, all they can be is negative. Television has never shown that it can have a positive effect on an issue. Because you can't do that in a soundbite. All you can say in a soundbite is that there are no good scoundrels over there at the government agency. You know, but you can't explain why they're really good guys. And so when you talk about issues, you really basically are talking about two media. You're talking about print, 99%, and you're talking about National Public Radio, 1%. All things considered, and Morning Edition, and the local NPR news, by the way, do reach probably more opinion leaders than any other medium in the country. If you really want to go for it big, you get a placement on there. Because what the hell, you're driving to work, you're driving home, what do? You turn on the radio, and if you're a person who's like that kind of radio, that's where you probably tune in. But 99% of it is print media, and so therefore, USA Today, which is now the biggest print medium, what's their circulation? Anybody know? Well, what's the population of the United States? Anybody know that? 270. What's the circulation of USA Today? Just slightly under 2 million. Just slightly under 2 million. The New York Times, a little bit less than that. The Wall Street Journal, a little bit less than that. The largest magazine in the country, anybody know what that is? Modern Maturity. AARP, they passed Reader's Digest and TV Guide about 5 years ago. Both TV Guide and Reader's Digest are declining, and Modern Maturity, and it used to be a crappy magazine, and finally about 6 months ago they hired a new editor and put some dough into it. And now it's really becoming a pretty classy publication. Their newsletters still stink. but their magazine, Modern Maturity, and it has now about 18 million circulations. What? Is it up to 22 now? Oh my God, well see, I haven't kept up with their membership drive. You get it automatically, you understand. I mean, it's, if you join, you get it. Which means that it may not be all that influential. Because do you belong to any organizations that send you stuff? And there is a difference between getting it with a membership and subscribing to it because you want to read it. You know, obviously there's a difference there. But I think you get the point. So, what the research shows is there are 4 things media can do, and you need to keep this in mind because they are a factor in your community. You can like them, you can lump them. Generally, we ignore them. The strategy we use 99% of the time is to go what we call under the radar. Go direct to the people who are going to make a difference, and who cares what Joe and Jane Sixpack think? They're not going to do anything about it anyway. You can't do that because you're aligned with politicians. Politicians still think that the media run the world, so, you know, but you should know better. The first thing that they can do is they can create awareness. Something appears on All Things Considered or in the media, in the newspapers, and, you know, you go to the coffee break and you say, hey, did you see that thing in the paper this morning? Doesn't mean you're endorsing it or anything, it's just, hey, did you see that thing in the paper? It then gets on the grapevine, and it starts going around, and other people look it up. And so, you know, diffusion process is occurring as it is supposed to occur. So if it's there, it can create awareness. Now, sometimes, most of the time, that awareness doesn't go anywhere. I mean, when you come in the morning to coffee break, you say, did you see that thing in the newspaper? You don't recite everything that was in the publication. So a lot of items just kind of drop. They just die. Maybe they haven't got enough sex appeal, which is why media is the way they are. The reason they write all this stuff is if it were the end of the world, you see, or this big fight, is in order to get your attention. If you want the best evidence of what has happened to media balance, media impartiality, you want to watch the Weather Channel. Stuff that we would no more have paid any attention to before, and now we have to go to our storm center where Dr. Jones, the expert in thunderstorms, will tell us what is happening. I say, what the hell is this? You know, we have thunderstorms all summer long. What's the big deal? Oh, and those of you in Smith County better stay indoors. Get real. Okay, why do they do this? Well, how long are people going to watch just to find out that it's 88 degrees and the dew point is 60? You see? You have to make it a big deal. Well, do you suppose they're doing that in other media too? Yes. Yes, absolutely. But, remember, it isn't totally their fault. It's largely their fault. Because the news media, unfortunately, if you still have the old Jeffersonian idea of the news media, which is probably the way my friends yesterday talked about them. Jefferson, remember, said that you needed a free flow of information to be self-governing, and that the newspapers seem to be the best way to do that, and that makes a lot of sense. But the Jeffersonian myth is just down the tubes because they have now just become big corporate businesses, just big corporate businesses. Every time the Gannett Company's shares go down, editorial heads roll. The people don't fire the ad salesman, don't fire the circulation people, my God. Just get rid of some more journalists. And if you ever wondered why it's the same story in every medium, when I was involved with our client at Columbine High School, why were there 700 media people signed in to cover that story? Couldn't the Associated Press do it all by themselves? Couldn't NBC send their cameras and then all NBC stations could run it? You see, everybody covers the same story. Now that does increase their power of awareness, though. You see? Because when they get on it, they don't do the reporting anymore. They're about business. They're about getting your attention and my attention. So that's their fault. But it's also our fault. Ed Davidson at the University of Tennessee has been studying people's response to news media for 35 years. You know what he finds? We prefer bad news to good news by a factor of 7 to 1. So if you want to know why nightly television is rape, robbery, murder, earthquake, train wreck, it's because they're going by the data. Now, they've overdone it. You should know that nightly, the view of evening television news in this country, viewers have declined by 40% in the last 4 years. People just aren't watching anymore. How many rape, robberies, and murders do you care about? And isn't it interesting at a time when crime has declined to the lowest level since the 20s? And if you watch television, God, you wouldn't step out your door without 2 bodyguards in a bulletproof vest. Well, isn't that right? It's the Weather Channel all over, you see. Never mind what's happening in society. You see, that's not the point. The point is, we've got to get your attention because advertisers aren't going to buy in with us unless we can report big numbers. And so, journalistic balance and all the things that Jefferson wanted, all of us, many of us came up through the news media. Many of the major news media are clients of our firm. And I'll tell you, I don't even like to go to their conventions anymore. Because the reporters and the editors go off in a corner and cry in their beer the whole time. Because they hate this. They have a professional ethic. They believe their job is to present information that's critical to us to be self-governing. But unfortunately, the guys and gals who own the place, and that's usually the stockholders out there, because they're mostly stockholder companies. No, that's not what it's about. And so it's a sad time for journalism. If you read the Columbia Journalism Review or listen to any of the journalism critics or read Brill's content, you'll see that the good journalists are all saying the same thing, but that's not the point. You're stuck with what's there, and they can make people aware. They certainly did a good job of making people aware that maybe we should rethink how we do Social Security. More importantly, over time, media can frame an issue. Call it positioning an issue, call it whatever you will. And the bad news is that's what those who would like to tear down Social Security, who would like to have various views of health care prevail, have been doing. Because there's been no one really to rebut their viewpoints. And so when the same thing is said over and over, it puts a frame around the issue. To give you some examples of that. Even though the Berlin Wall has fallen, communism is a joke, you still cannot say anything good about communism in the United States. If you do, people will raise their eyebrows and look at you. You can't even be objective about it. And look at the Castro situation, for heaven's sake. Sure, it's a dictatorship and all that, but a whole lot of people that never went to school under the previous dictator are going to school. Healthcare is better. You got to balance this, but you can't do that because that issue was framed. Communism is bad. Communism is the devil incarnate. It's the Antichrist. It's whatever. See, that issue got framed. Well, we need to be active with opinion leaders and others who can unframe what they've done about Social Security. Because what they've framed is Social Security is broken. It's broken in the way it works, and it's going broke financially. We need to unframe that. The third and most powerful thing. Now, this framing has somewhat come undone. Because though the media jumped on this right-wing bandwagon in the beginning, they have, of course, run into some rather powerful opposite viewpoints, which they felt they really had to carry, because, again, it was exciting. When Alan Greenspan says this is stupid, what you're talking about is not the way, as he said. And when the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange and of the Securities and Exchange Commission both say, for heaven's sake, can you imagine the stock market if some firm or a group of firms have these trillions of dollars to invest in it? It's a dumb idea. So there's a little unframing, but I think you get the point. They can frame an issue.